Battleground Canada, where we have a late-breaking update on the Liberal leadership race and the supporter category that has signed up as supporters of the party, but maybe not registering in hoped-for numbers to actually participate in the vote. So, for an update now, we turn to Jessica Murphy, who is here in studio with us. Good to have you back on. And Jessica, you have been following this for weeks now.
Indeed.
I know you're going to be in Montreal tomorrow to talk about the last and final debate. I want to talk about that in a sec, but first, just give us the lowdown on the registration numbers.
Well, they're probably not as high as the Liberal Party actually wanted. We're looking at about just over 40% of people who are eligible to vote actually registering. So here we have the numbers up on the screen. Eligible to register, 294,000. You remember the Liberals did a victory lap around that. They were very happy to have added a lot of supporters and members registered to vote. Just over 126,000 now people who are actually registered to vote. And that has increased over the course of the past week. This is the extension that was granted by the Liberal Party. They managed in that final week, that final push, to add 38,000 to that overall number. So again, just over 40% and adding 38,000. And again, that really big push at the end, we do know it was somewhat controversial among rival camps whether or not to grant this extension that was requested mainly by Justin Trudeau's camp. And again, this final push at the end, just adding that small amount.
And it was controversial also, the phone campaign that they ran in order to get people to register to vote, because you have to be registered in order to actually cast a ballot in the race. How does all of this compare to, say, the NDP's leadership race that ended up choosing Thomas Mulcair?
Well, this will be interesting to look at. It's sort of fun to kick the Liberals on this in a sense and say, hey, they came out and they were so happy with these great numbers, but in the end, just over 40,000. The NDP had 131,000 actual members. For the Liberal Party here, it is, of course, you're looking at both supporters and members in this category, slightly different. So the NDP had 131,000. When it comes to voter turnout, whether you're talking federal elections, municipal elections, or leadership conventions that we'll be seeing in April or with any leadership amount, you're not going to get 100%. So in terms of what the NDP got was 65,000. And we may see, of course, a whittling down eventually of the 127 to 126, 127,000 that the Liberals do have right now registered. I'll note that those numbers, however, are not yet confirmed by the party, that 127,000, but it is something that's been backed up by other news organizations as well. They've had sources on this. We have our own source on this. We've seen it, those figures sort of bandied about by a lot of the rival camps. But again, the party right now is vetting those numbers. They're going through them, checking for duplications and everything like that as well. So when they come out with official numbers next week, we may see a further whittling down of that 127,000. And again, we don't know what the voter turnout will be in April.
Well, let's look at this then in terms of the debate tomorrow. I know that, there are some who are saying it looks more like a coronation now or less like a coronation now, and we've got the final debate tomorrow. How does this all play into that?
Well, certainly there's a lot of grumbling from some of the rival camps, Joyce Murray, Martha Hall-Findlay, for example, Martin Cochon as well, who were really upset by that extension that the party granted. They were really concerned, saying it really did seem to benefit the Trudeau camp more than anyone else. So there was definitely frustration coming from the rival camps on that issue. Most of the teams seemed quite happy with the party actually then going that extra step, reaching out to voters through that robocall campaign, calling people who weren't registering, saying in the end it was good for the health of the party to do so. But it seems like that might not be the only part of the story. According to our source, a Liberal member and party worker told us that in this case, the party was also concerned about numbers that may be embarrassing. Again, they came out, they were very happy, and rightfully so, with the 294,000 who had signed up as supporters and members, and they were concerned when they weren't getting that traction when it came to registering. That's what our source was telling us. So there may have been more than one reason, whether it was the urging from one camp and some others. Deborah Coyne's camp wanted the extension granted, but also perhaps their own concerns for how it would look. And again, for the health of the party. The more people registered, the better.
Just very quickly, give us the lowdown of what to expect in the debate tomorrow.
Well, final debate, Montreal. It will be, of course, fewer candidates. We've had 3 dropouts so far. Most recently, just this week, David Birchie, of course, George Takash and Marc Garneau had dropped out as well. So we're going to see 6 people on stage. It's very traditional format, opening and closing remarks, 3-on-3 debates, 1-on-1 debates. But I'll just note as well, they're touching on some hot button issues that will be interesting, things like justice, things like the environment, climate change, energy policy, where some of these candidates on stage will differ, have come out for and against sort of, the development of the oil sands and things like that, various justice policies. So there may be some friction and back and forth there to watch. And again,
And you'll be there.
I will be there. I will be there. So we'll be bringing that to you over the weekend and on Monday, of course, on Battleground.
All right. Appreciate it. Thanks very much, Jessica.
You're welcome.
Joining us now to talk more about the disappointing Liberal leadership registration numbers and what we can expect when the convention starts is Sun News Network's Marco Glasman. He joins us from Toronto. Mark, and welcome to the show.
Thanks, Daniel. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. So I'd like to ask you, first of all, I know you've been on the ground in political campaigns in the past. When you see the kind of, I guess, the way that this Liberal campaign has gone and the enthusiasm to begin with, and now some disappointment with the way things have gone, how do campaigns react to that sort of thing, and how do they overcome it?
Well, I think it's a tough situation, particularly this one. For the Trudeau campaign specifically, I mean, they by asking for the extension, I think they used a lot of political capital. I think especially as you saw the reaction from a few other campaigns not being happy with the extension of a week. And things have kind of backfired, I would say, if you look at where they are now. So really, it's about just moving forward. I would say they're gonna talk a lot about the fact that they have almost 300,000 supporters still signed up. That you heard Trudeau talking about that today. So I think you're going to see that, and in talking about how it's a new kind of experiment. He mentioned today it's a new experiment that the Liberal Party has embarked on, that sort of thing. So I think you'll hear a lot of that.
What's interesting, though, is what some of our sources are telling us about how the party has reacted to the registration numbers, with the membership secretary going into their war room, their hot room, whatever you want to call it, and saying essentially, we have got to avoid embarrassment here, get these numbers up, and Trudeau has to avoid embarrassment, naming Trudeau specifically. Exactly.
You know what, Daniel, what's funny is it's an embarrassment in a number of ways, I would say, or could be seen as an embarrassment. First of all, as Jessica already mentioned, the numbers for the NDP, they had members, 131,000 members, compared to this, only 127,000 supporters that actually registered, supporters and members. You can see that there's that the idea that there was going to be this huge influx, this huge enthusiasm coming out from a supporter category simply isn't there. It hasn't happened. Also, what I find really interesting is when you hear about Justin Trudeau's campaign specifically, you hear a lot about how he is supposed to be bringing new youth, new invigorated ideas, and a lot of the young people are really getting into his campaign, following him on Twitter. But actually, what's interesting is that earlier in the week there was reports of a breakdown of the numbers of people that have actually registered to vote, and what you've seen actually is that around 60% of them were over the age of 50, and only 8% were under the age of 25. So that whole idea that you have, this huge youth movement in support of Justin Trudeau, it's questionable as to whether it's even there at all.
If anything, if those numbers are correct and we see an older skew to the supporters of Trudeau, it could be indication of some people who have a nostalgia for his dad. And what's also interesting is that it's Joyce Murray, the cooperation candidate, who has the stronger youth numbers.
Definitely, Daniel. I think that's a great point. If you look at over the number over 60% over the age of 50, what you could wonder is that whether a lot of these people are former Trudeauholics, Trudeau mania, that sort of thing, that loved his father, that are now remembering the days and hoping that they can return to them. Whereas, as you said, Joyce Murray has a great following of people, it seems like, out west, and particularly in BC. And if you look at the regional breakdown, I believe the numbers were around 13% earlier this week of registered voters out of BC, and I would assume that many of them are going to Joyce Murray.
All right, Marco, thank you.
Thank you very much.